So, this episode of Fucked Up Podcast, we have the Mr. Phil Vickery. Just for anyone that's unsure, it's not the rugby player,
I get that all
it is
the
the
time.
chef. Yeah. So, Michelin Chef, AA, Chef of the Year,
Yeah.
Celebrity Chef, TV Chef. Bloody hell, it never goes on, eh?
Yeah, it
So,
does actually. Yeah, but
welcome.
I sort of forgot about a lot of it. I'm an old man now.
I'm, I'm not surprised. So, thanks for coming along, Phil. I
My
know you're
pleasure.
busy, flying around all over the place.
Yep.
So I basically want to talk about your journey becoming a
hmm
chef, because a lot of people it is a struggle. Peer pressure. So like families want people to go to university or do whatever, and not necessarily in doing chefing. Not so bad now, I don't suppose. But how did that come about? Was that your first job or?
Very interesting. My older brother, who sadly passed away last year, I think it was last year, year before. Anyway, he was a doctor, and he was a tropical medicine expert, and he sailed through his O levels and A levels, and he didn't do any revision. It really pissed me off because he didn't do any revision, got straight A's. And I struggled at school. I struggled to revise. I struggled to retain knowledge. And when my brother had got to medical school, and I was about, I suppose, 9 or 10, and wanted to be a chef. And I remember I've still got the book actually, might up there somewhere in my antique bit. Warren's Everyday Cookery. And now my dad had was a caretaker of a village hall. Like a jumble sale, and at the end, all his books left over, and this book was there left. And I started reading it, and then it's got colour plates of, food and chefs in black and white, filleting fish, and I've got to want to be a chef. And I was about 9. And I said to my mum, some years later, I was probably about sort of early secondary school, and I said, my mum said, "What are you going to do?" Because in those days, in Folkestone in Kent, you did two things: you went on the ferries, which were the Channel ferries going forwards and backwards, or you went down the mines. There were three very big pits down in Kent at the time, Kent Coalfield. A lot of my mates went down the pit, and that was your option. And I go down the pit, no chance. And I thought, well, I don't really want the boats, and so. Uh, the last year of school, I could do a day release. Where I was on fifth year, Wednesdays, we went and cooked at college. So I enrolled on the cookery course, only because I thought, that's a bit easy. And also, I could not have to go to school, didn't have a school uniform. But when I'm on the course, I was really about three blokes, rest of the girls. So you got to cut all the names under the sun, and gay boy, blah, 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 woman, blah, blah, blah. And so I didn't really care about that. It's just because I was off school for a day. Anyway, at the end of that year, I did quite well. I won Student of the Year. Still got the book somewhere. And then I thought, well, that's going to get me into the catering course. If I've won that student, they ain't going to turn me down, are they? So I thought, well, I haven't got to do any exams. Easy, take the easy life. Was it Warren Buffett or what's the other fella? Bill Gates, who once said, if you want something done, give it to a lazy person because they'll find the quickest way of doing it. that was me. I thought, just get him that, doing the exams. So I got on the course. I remember going to the interview, got on the course. That was it. So I did a 2-year chef's course. Now, prior to that, my brother had gone to medical school. And I remember saying to my mother, oh, I'm going to become a chef. And she looked at me. I'll never forget it. She looked at me and she said, "You want to be a cook?" I'm like, really? Oh, good luck with that one. And that's the only encouragement they gave me. Was now to go to London. I had to go to Seaside Hotel, which was shit. But when I went to I finished college in 1979, got this job, literally finished on a Friday, went on a Monday, 28 quid a week. And as I walked in there, the head chef was about 60. Sous chef Bert, he must have been 70. The breakfast chef cum veg chef was Tom, he must have been in his 70s. The larder chef was 58. The pastry chef was called Jean Clauson, he was in his 70s. And I thought, oh my God, these old boys have been there for years. But their skill was really interesting. They proper old school chefs knew it. On top of that, Calum, they drank 4 pints of bitter every lunchtime and 4 pints of bitter in the evening. And that was just the way it was. And there was no fights, no aggro, no swearing, no shouting, no accidents. It was just the done thing. So I did that. I did that for a bit, and that's how I got into it. But my mother was like, oh, I was working all the hours God sends. But I found it easy, and I found it enjoyable, and I felt I know you've been in the forces. I've never been in the forces, but to me, from what I glean from people, they're like, well, cooking's like that. Those kitchens were that regimental. You didn't fit in, you were gone. You were hounded out. You just had to never let anyone down. If your mate was in a shit, you give him a hand. If he was in a shit, and it was at 16, 18 hours a day, and I loved it. I loved it. And that's how I got started, really. That was in a seaside hotel. There you go.
So definitely like the Navy because there was pints flying about everywhere as well.
Do you know something? An interesting, Calum. When I went to Gravestime Manor in what time? That was 85, early part of 85.
Yeah.
We still had a beer allowance. Lager and bitter came every week. You took your cans and put it in your thing, and that was the way it was. It was well, I saw a few fights, but that was not because they were fueled with alcohol, just because they were French and we didn't get on.
Oh.
But,
So where did you do college? Was that at home? Was it,
yeah,
or did you go
Folkestone.
to London for college?
No, I went to Folkestone College.
Folkestone.
They did one, and then my parents wouldn't let me go to work, so I had to do. I think it was a year in a seaside hotel, and I got sacked for that. And got sacked. So I wouldn't do breakfast. I got sacked a few times. Some in the papers, some not. But I got sacked from that job, and because it was unfair. We all took turns to do breakfast, and I was done one, and he's like, "You got to do breakfast again." I'm like, "What?" His name was Freddie Jones. He suddenly died a few months ago. He said, no, you got to do it. I said, that's not right. He ain't done it. Oh, you do it or piss off. I went, okay, I'll go. Got my knives, walked out. I got home.
Gee
My
whiz.
father got a phone call from him, so I'll get him to come back and talk to me. So I went back to talk to him, and he said, these things happen. Blah, blah. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll come back and work for you, but I'm looking for a job. And so I did. I literally went back to work. I think it was a Wednesday. Thursday, the caterer came out, went down to Smith's in Folkestone, bought the caterer, opened it up, and there was in the job section there was two up north, and I knew the Lancashire quite well, the Lake District, because my mum's family lived there. That we love the Lake District, and there was two jobs, one at the Pheasant Hotel in Bassenthwaite, and Michael's Nook. And I wrote to Michael's Nook, and I got an interview. I literally went up from Folkestone and back in the day. If you bought a student rail ticket in those days, you got one for 10 quid a year, Calum, right? For 10 quid a year, you got one free train journey anywhere in 24 hours. So I went to Lake District and back in 24 hours. Got the job. Bought my old man's Allegro, lost in Allegro, got in it, drove up north, never came back. 18, left forever, and that was it. That was the start. That was the start when it was. And we'll come on to the next bit because it's really pertinent to what you're going to talk about later. But I loved it. I was in Lake District, beautiful. Had a walled garden. We were getting chickens with the guts in. We were cooking Windermere char. It was wonderful. I loved it. It was a country house hotel, and it really catapulted me into that. Blimey, wow! This is cooking. This is real cooking. However, there was a horrible chef there called Nigel Marriage. Now you probably remember him. He's the one that got hounded out of John Burton races when they did the expo about chefs getting beaten and kicked and punched, and when it all came out about 15, 20 years ago. He was my head chef, and he was horrible bloke, and he was violent. He mind games. He was a real horrible man, and
Real old school.
yeah, but he was mentally vicious. He was horrible man, and it was awful. And then one day in the kitchen, a friend of mine called Paul, who was still very good friends, we ended up running that together. He took too much. He rounded too much, and he got hold of him. And he squeezed the life out of him. And he said, "If you ever do it again, I'm going to effing kill you," to the chef. And he left us alone after that. But he was a horrible piece of work. And when that John Burton race thing came out, it was fantastic. You see him running across the field, coward, you know. But the reason why I mentioned that was, he's gone, finished. He was toast, overnight gone. John Burton race really struggled to recover from that, I think. But it's all documented, so it's nothing. Not going to sue me. But what it did do was it made me realise that if I ever became a chef, I would never treat people like that. It was awful. And I went out one day, went to Blackpool, and I got an interview in the Dalmini Hotel in Blackpool because I couldn't take it anymore. And I got a job, but I just went back, and thank God, I actually went to the boss and said, I'm leaving. Why? I said, because I'm frightened to death to tell you, he's going to, And then he called him in, and he came back and gave me a hard time after that. Yeah, well, you tell him that you aren't doing that. Anyway, he left. And actually, he went to become Raymond Blanc's head chef at the old Petit Blanc in Summertown. God, that was late. When was that? That was early 80s. And then me and Paul took over. I mean, we flourished, and I stayed there 4 years. We got Restaurant of the Year, and at Michael's Nook, we got some really good reviews. We had an Michelin Star, and and that's where I look back, and you're going to talk about the get hard to get in the industry. God, I nearly gave up, and that was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So
that was probably one of your biggest lessons, though, wasn't it? Because you just said. It made you realise if you were going to be stay in the industry, you were not going to be like that person. That dealt you a lesson early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it made me realise that if I was to become a head chef or run a business, that I would never treat my staff like that. No way. It was awful. So yeah, in one way it was awful, but it was a good lesson to learn. And I remember when I eventually made it at the castle, doing Michelin Star, and I used to get people writing to me saying, Phil, we're going to job you. People tell me you're just a really nice bloke to work for. And they actually said that in their application letter, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I had my moments, like we all do, but it was that environment. But it was it was a salutary lesson, put it that way.
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult now because you've got different ends of the spectrum now. You've got old school and you've got buttercups. We need this kind of halfway home because a kitchen's a tough environment. It's it's especially when it's full throttle. It's tempers do get raised, but I think what people have got to understand about you actually get more out of people by talking with them and not dictating to them.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's interesting. I don't know about you, but again, I perhaps allude to the fact you're in the services. But the young boys come in; they're real cocky, and and within a few months they're in tears, and that's how hard it was. I don't mean because of violence, because it was just hard work, and they struggled with the precision. And I remember it was a little thing when I had my Michelin Star. We won Restaurant of the Year. Gordon Ramsay came for lunch. And he came, I'll never forget it, he came to lunch. And he had a poached egg tart. And Julian, my head chef at the time, he was doing eggs. And he put his poached egg on. I could see it was an absolute, bloody ice hockey puck. And he brought it over. And I thought, mate. So I got hold of it. I got hold of him. I was like, come here. I said, you've got a 3-star chef upstairs. And you're going to serve him this? He went, sorry, chef. He still tells about it now. But, there's no excuses. I was a real stickler for, we used to take a Polaroid picture of the first meal out of everyone, and 180 later, we'd take the last picture. Was it the same? Yes, it was. And that was not necessarily high-end cooking or technically, really technical cooking. It was about consistency and very
standards.
Things. Just so when you cook your fish and chips, if there's no point in you doing one and then six portions later it's all soggy. It's no point. You wouldn't have customers. So that was it to me. And there was, in my eyes, there's no excuses. It had to be right. Otherwise, just go. I don't care. Just leave. We'll sort it.
I think that's important. No, it doesn't matter what level, if it's Michelin or if it's takeaway. At the end of the day, consistency is king. You don't want someone walking past the window or coming into a restaurant and deciding, I will not bother eating tonight because such and such isn't working. It's got to be consistent throughout. You need a day off, but the food's got to be the same when you're not at work as well, isn't it?
It's just making sure that every day.
And tell me. So, how long did you work with Gary Rhodes for?
I never worked with Gary. I took over from Gary.
Did you not? I thought you.
I
thought you worked.
No. I opened a hotel called the Mount Somerset, which is outside Taunton. Mm-hmm. Gary was at the castle at the time. At his height, his magnificence, I suppose you could call it. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And he left quite abruptly. Him and Mr. Chapman fell out, as we did a few years later. And then they had no chef. And Ian Fleming, good old Scotsman, actually he used to have a restaurant up near. He had the ubiquitous Chip for a bit, and also a restaurant just near Stirling Hotel. He phoned me up. He said, "Oh, Gary's left. because I was cooking down the road, we know Mr. Chapman's eating your food. Would you like to come and have a chat about the head chef's job? I said, okay. I'd just been made redundant. L2 went bust. I was out of work. I went fishing, came home. So I went in there. I walked into his office and he went, oh, a bit scruffy. I'm always a bit scruffy, Calum, you know what I'm like. And he went, this is a full-blown interview. I went, oh, was it? I don't know. He just told me it was a chat. No, it was an interview. And he sat there and grilled me for 2 hours or an hour and a half. And I thought, oh, this is a waste of time. I ain't going to get this job. What books did I read and where did I eat and have you been to France? And oh my God, I said to him, and what's your vision in life? Where are you going? I said, I've never booked anything in my life. Even now, Calum, I've never planned anything in my life. It just happened. So I was like, he looked at me, he says, highly unlikely you get a job here, but I'll get you a job. I said, oh, thanks very much. I blew that. Someone out went fishing. A day later, Ian Fleming calls me again. Phil, we got a bit of a change of mind. I went, oh, have you? I think we told me to get the job. And he went, no, come back. I said, do I need to put a suit on? He laughed. No, he's fine. Went back. I walked in Chapman's office. There was a bottle of champagne, right, and 2 glasses. And I thought, well, that's even for me or the next fella. And he just said to me, he looked at me and he went, Phil Vickery, that's Philip then, because I hate being called Philip. I call myself Philip Vickery. Would you like the job of the head chef of the castle? And I went, what? I thought it wasn't mine. He said, no. Would you like the job? And I went, how much money are you going to pay me? So he told me, I can't remember what it was now. And then we cut champagne. Started the next day. Gary had left under a bit of a cloud, took all the stuff, all the pans, everything. It was filthy. The place was filthy. It was a nightmare. I had 2 French guys who couldn't speak English who just arrived. A guy called John, a guy called Nigel. Nigel became a very good chef and worked for me. Jerry was a breakfast chef, and that was it. Ian, my sous chef, came with me. So I did 6 weeks without a day off. And I had to cook his menu because it all been out. Oh my God, I didn't know where I was going. But, we just did it. In 6 weeks out of day off, you just get on with it, and that was it. So I never, then when I got, so a year later, so I got staffing, or a year and a half, got my Michelin Star in my own right. They took it away and came back. Gary wrote to me saying, nice one, well done. And then when I left, Richard Guest, I wrote to him and went, welcome to the club. Because it was all the chefs over the years. But suddenly we fell out and had to go to the court. But apart from that, it was all right.
And how long did you have the Michelin Star for? Was it 3 or 4 years or something?
4 years,
was
it
it?
was 4 years and they came and took it away.
Yeah.
That really pissed me off. That did. That really did wind me up because in that same year I'd won the Times Restaurant of the Year. Me and Marco, Jonathan Meads, Times Restaurant of the Year. I had 8 out of 10 Good Food Guide, County Restaurant of the Year, and Good Food Guide. I'd been Ego Money Chef of the Year, British Meat Chef of the Year. 4 rosettes in the A Guide for 8 years, 7, 8 years. Picked the top 15, no Michelin Star. That really did piss me off. So when he came down to tell me I got my star anymore, we had a bit of a row. And he was just a bit of a twat. And I ever since then I thought, no, I'm just gonna plough my own furrow. I don't care. I just do not care. Okay, it's a bit of a maverick and a bit, but we haven't a brasserie. When the Star went, it's really successful. And that and I do in my demonstrations now, I say to people, it sort of moulded me a bit the way, but Michelin, if you don't fit into the way they like you to cook, then you're just sort of cast aside a little bit and they don't really get it. And I was like, oh, God, stick up. In actual fact, I did say stick up your ass. And the Daily Mail phone, I told the Michelin man to stick up his ass. It wasn't quite like that, but we had a heated discussion about it. And ever since then, I've never been a fan. And if I go to a restaurant now that's got a spume, a foam, a star, I'm not interested. I won't go. Not interested. And that sort of
It's quite
forced me to cook. Not forced me, but I thought, no, I'm not being told what to do. You've got to remember, Calum, some of our best chefs in this country. Let me give you an example. Hester Blumenthal, debt collector. Nico Ladenis works in the oil business. Ross Burden, who was a great chef on Ready Steady Cook, sadly died. He really knew his stuff. He was a zoologist. All these guys came from cooking through a different route. So they question it. They don't have this formulaic way of cooking or thinking. Michelin used to do that a little bit. And this, you have to do it this way. No, you don't. Even now, I question stuff. Question it all the time. If I could find an easier, better way of doing it with the same results, fine. I was one of the first chefs to get my fish prepped. We had this conversation with your lads, at what are they called? Coopers. I said to them, no, I get in the price, prepped, filleted, pin, bone, skin. Fantastic. And why do I need to spend 2 hours doing it when I can teach him how to cook? Oh, you're de-skilling the industry, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, he's a fishmonger. He don't come in my kitchen and make a sauce, does he? He does fish. So, I got some real shit for that. But I look at things and, why? Why am I doing it? But why waste of time? It's not practical. So, yeah, I got a bit of shit for that.
I think it's a good skill set. It's good to have that skill set, but I'm kind of with you here on this because, like, you've got folk in my industry and they're buying in, like, say, for instance, Norwegian fish with skin on, bone in, and then they're standing there every day cutting it, skinning it, and boning it, and I'm like, I can't get my head around it. I just put a text message in and I get delivered what I require. Someone else has done it for me, But it's like, it gives me zero waste.
Yep.
That's right. It's right. I've got zero waste. I've got a consistent product because someone specialises in it. It doesn't matter if I'm in or, like who's cutting the fish that day if it's cut slightly different. At the end of the day, I had 2 people cutting my fish at Cooper's and I could always tell when they were off on holiday. I used to phone up and say, who's cutting my fish? No one different. Yes, there is. You could tell straight away because it was just slightly different. I could tell because I get the bone cut out of the haddock at a slightly different angle because I don't like the belly flap on it. And you got to remember, these guys are getting paid per weight. So when they're skinning and boning a fish and putting it into the box and it gets weighed, and then that's how they get their salary. So if I'm wanting a little different bit of cut, it's not maybe best for them. So I could always tell when it was when Jason was on holiday because the cut was just slightly different.
Well, it's interesting. On that note, I do take your point, and I think it's very salient that it's a real skill to have, but you can learn that. It's not every day. You can learn to fillet fish. Fantastic, we'll do it. But I much rather teach them guys the basics of cooking and getting that thing right. Then if you want to go and do it, that's fine. It's a bit like sous vide. I've never done sous vide in my life. I wouldn't know how to start doing it. I've never ever done it. And that's perhaps I'm a bit old school, but that's the way things are, and things move on, and technology changes, and we have to embrace that. And I fully understand all that. However,
old school. You've got a chopper sitting behind you.
We'll come on to that in a second, right? There's a reason why I've got that. But the point being is that you need to embrace those things. But when that goes wrong, you need to know how to do it properly. So if your filleting man suddenly cuts his fingers off, you've got to be able to do it yourself. So I understand that, but things have moved on. That chopper, right? The only reason I've got that is because when I was a young boy, my dad wouldn't let me have one. He said they're too dangerous. So when I was old enough to buy one, I bought it just to piss him off. There you go. Never laughed about that. But Dad, dangerous.
You still won't go on it because you don't know how to ride it.
It's really uncomfortable, and I'm a bit too fat now. But there we are. That's good fun. And it's a Mark 1. Mark 1. They're the most to have. Anyway.
Definitely. So, how did you tell me the journey of how television came about for you? Because that's been a huge part of your career.
When you got Michelin Star, it put you in a very elite group, and I think it was 28 or 29 at the time, 1, 2s and 3s, which is fine. And you got on television. Well, I remember the Roux brothers that they did a bit of telly, and I remember Pierre Kaufman saying, "Oh, well, once you take one step out the kitchen, you'll never come back in. It's really bad." Blah blah blah. So your mate and my mate Nick Nairn, he had a Michelin Star. Paul Rankin had a Michelin Star, and they were already looking for new chefs. And Nick had said to Caroline Officer, who was the producer at the time, "Give Phil a ring. He's a good chef, We'll have Michelin Stars." And that was fine. So she phones me up and she said, Phil's Caroline Officer, ready to cook. Do you want to come and do an audition? I said, no, I'm not interested. No, that's fine. It's not my scene. I'm a real chef. Gordon Ramsay once said that to me. You won't see me on telly, Phil. I'm a real effing chef. Look at him now. So I'm going back to mid-90s. So I said, no, not interested. That's fine. And she went, okay, fair enough. And then that was it. It went away. Then about a month later, she called me again. So look, Phil, would you reconsider? We're struggling, blah, blah, blah. Happened to be in London. Anyway, I said, okay, I'll come and do an audition. And in those days, we did an audition with no audience, full cameras. Fern was there and a civvies, other chef, and you went ready, steady, cook. It was like a proper show, but that audience. And then I did a salmon dish, and chap from Bristol did some other stuff. That was fine. Off he went. And then we did it, and then thanks very much, and we go and get changed. And there was a knock on my door. She opened the door. She said, "Phil, we think you're really good. When can you start?" And I went, "Let me think about it." So I went back. I phoned Paul Rankin, and I said to him, "Paul, what do you reckon?" He said, "Phil, bear in mind these will get 8 million views on celebrity stuff at this time." He said to me, "Phil, it will fill your restaurant overnight." So I did it, and it bloody hell it did. And when we did, I'd one with Vinnie Jones, which is a bit further down the line. We got just under 8 million viewers. And the classic line, which I remember, when I see Vinny, I always mention it to him. It was, "Don't worry, Phil, because if we lose the cooking, we'll definitely win the fight afterwards."
And he wasn't joking.
No, he wasn't. He meant it. And catapults you into a completely different era. It really does. On the back of that, Nick Nairn again called me and said, "Look, Phil, I've asked to do the holiday programme with Jill Dando. I can't make it. We're going to Spice Islands. I'll put your name forward." So BBC flew me to Zanzibar, to the Spice Islands. Overnight, that catapults you into a different league again. Tables of 10, 6, 8, 12. And the impact on the business was amazing. And I did it purely as a commercial decision. And again, it was slightly frowned upon in those days. You got called a shit chef because you're doing that crap programme, blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, any chef would cut his fingers off to get on television. And I'm so glad that we did it and pioneered it. And I'm immensely proud of Ready Steady Cook, because in the early days, there'd be things like, "Oh, yesterday's fish and chips," or a bag of potatoes, or a 5 kilo block of chocolate. And we did stuff in 20 minutes. Now, as I said to an interview years ago, it's not the haute cuisine. It's not going to set the world on fire. You're not going to get a Michelin star. You're not going to be. But if one person attempts a simple dish like my brother, a soup, whatever, bit of fish, it's done its job. And I think it was amazing. And I was very proud to be a part of it. And
that was, to be honest, it was a great programme.
It's fantastic. You get 2.5 million in the afternoon watching it. And that catapults you in a different league. And then, of course, the nice big deals come along, and you get knife deals. And yeah, it really did. It was wonderful. And then I did that for about 5, 6 years. Then me and my old boss fell out. We had to go to court. It's all a bit sad. He's a bit of a silly old sausage.
It's a bit of a reoccurring theme, isn't it?
Yes, there is. And he was a bit of a silly old sausage. But I won, and it was all fine, and off we go. And then I lost my job overnight, so I didn't know nothing. I was writing for the News of the World, not News of the World, the Sunday People at the time. They were brilliant, really good. They did a recipe a week. That sort of kept me going. And then Fern was, what was she doing? She was filling in with Richard Madeley on This Morning, when at the end of Ready Steady Cook days, when we first got together. And Calum Smith, John Throde was on. John left. I don't know what he did. He just didn't want to do it anymore. And the phone I said, "Do you want to do This Morning?" I went, "Go on." I was doing 2 days a week, and then Fern did with John Leslie, and then when they left, then John Leslie and Fern and Philip and I wait for this, Calum. If they don't sack me, right? Because my contract runs in January. If I can make it to next September, all right, which is when I started in my head, 25 years I've done it.
Long time, huh?
Yeah, 25 years, man and boy. So nearly a third of my life I've done that programme, and I love it. I'm there tomorrow making mashed potatoes. There you go. That's why I met you, Calum. That's how I met you. We came out and filmed, didn't we? Well,
I know it is.
Yeah.
I know it was. That was, I think, what was that, 2012, 2013? Something like that. It was before I won Fish and Chip Shop of the Year, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Way before.
Yeah, it was. I just got MSc accredited, and you were going to be coming to Peterhead, and then I arranged you to go and meet Coopers and whatnot. That's right.
We had that massive fish.
And you went and cooked on the beach.
We've got the camera out. He was huge. We were filming. He went, "Don't be fucking filming me, flipping fucking fish." Just like, "What, mate? No worries. I want to get me head kicked in."
I remember you were on the fish market, and the boys going, "What a find for choice! What a find for choice!" And you're going, "Danny, what's he going on about?"
Oh, it's fun. But it's interesting. Just get back to that. When I left my job abruptly, what you got to remember, Calum, also is in those days, I think it's now. I've got a list on my computer here somewhere. With This Morning, I've been to 65
on your
countries.
on your ZX Spectrum.
You're right. 65 countries or states around the world through This Morning. I've been all over the world cooking. We shut the Sydney Harbour Bridge so I could do a piece of camera. I cooked at Barrier Reef. I cooked in India. I cooked in Peru. I've cooked in Brazil. I've cooked in Norway, all over Europe. I've cooked in everywhere. Fantastic. And that purely came from that television break. And we just totted it out the other day. And I think if I can get to 100 before I'm sort of now, because all the cruise liners come along, I'm off on a cruise. I just come back from one. I went to Canada and I'm go all over the world cruising. It's fantastic. So I'm a lucky boy, but that came from having a very good, solid knowledge of cooking, and that's what we get back to.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, every time I've tried to get a hold of you, you're always abroad doing
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
And, I don't think it's necessarily luck. Like sometimes you can say things were luck, but at the end of the day, no, you were just the right person at the right time.
yeah.
And you've
But
been
then,
consistent. So consistent, again, consistency is what we were talking about, isn't it?
it is.
You've been consistent.
Oh, sorry, Karen, I didn't mean to interrupt
Yeah, so like you being a steady Eddie consistent for this morning, they're going to throw you all over the place because they know what you're going to go and do the job for them. They're not having to look over their shoulder or worry what you're up to. Like mind you, if they really had any sense, it would be they would be watching what you're up to.
you. Anyway,
Oh.
yeah, but on that point, you're actually right. But I do think you make your own luck, and I think to a certain
Yeah,
extent, I was lucky. I was lucky to be in the right position at the right time. You could argue that I was in the right place in Taunton. It just happened, but you still got to do the job. Once you got it, you've got to keep it. And I just was filming on the telly today. My daughter and I are filming we were fishing in Cornwall in the summer. Just great fun and very relaxed. But there's a very clever, careful way I cook on telly or filming, whatever. It's
Mhm.
very carefully worked out. I research inside out. I'm always reading books. I mean, I'll give you an example of these ones here. So, Kitchen Science. I've read that. I'm reading it again. I'm halfway through on my cruise. I need to read that. FODMAP diet. Food of Spain and Portugal. Look, they're all here. All these books. All these books, my reference books you see here, all of them. I need them at some point. And so I'll constantly go back, research, understand, question stuff. I never stop. And it looks like you want a bit of fun and laughter, but there's a very serious thing,
you've
core
got
running through all that.
you've got you've got a shit hot memory, to be honest, because like you remember it was Cooper's. Do you know what I mean? That's a long time ago, and you remember you were at Cooper's Seafood. It's nuts.
No, it's fine.
So
It seems like a
okay,
few years ago to me.
so tell me, I remember talking to you about this, and you were kind of became the gluten-free chef.
Yeah,
Now, how did that come about?
purely by chance. We had a Christmas puddings company, and a friend of mine called Steve Poole, and we just thought we'd muck about. He was a development chef. And we thought we'd do Christmas pudding because there wasn't any. I'm going back 20 odd years, 18 years. They were around, but they were pretty much run the mill. So we developed a golden orange, a golden carrot one. Really, really nice stuff. And we used organic stuff. That was the whole point of it. Now, that company that we used were really good. And then next year we came to do them, or halfway through the production line, flour went through the roof. I mean, it tripled in price. Organic flour is a nightmare. We couldn't
Hmm.
get on with it or something. Anyway, so my development chef friend Steve said to me, "I told you, whack a bit of rice flour in. That's fine because it's only a binder, and it make it gluten free." And I'm like, "Really? What does that mean?" And he said, "Yeah, it's making gluten free. Another thing we could put on our little tick." Oh, okay, go on then. Backed it in, did a factory trial. Couldn't tell difference. Anyway, we then
Hmm.
went to the Celiac Society and said, "Look, can we have a logo for free?" Like, no. No, I said, "Oh, why not?" I said, "No, because it's 10 grand a year." So I can't afford that. We're a fledgling company. I said, "What we'll do, I'll do some PR for you." That's okay. So we did a bit of PR. They gave me the logo free, whacked it on there. Went to Islington Food Fair, Christmas Food Fair. I'll never forget it. We had about five or six in the range. Can't remember now. We did cherry one, chocolate and cherry. We're giving out samples. The amount of people who walked past me, Calum, went, "No, I'm gluten free. I'm celiac." I went, "Gluten free? What? Don't believe you." show me. I showed the packet. They went, bloody hell, I'll taste it. And they went, yep, I'll have 20. No, actually, no, I'll have 30. Yeah, yeah, okay, make that 50. So we did 50 grand retail sale one Christmas. It's mental. And then I thought, bloody hell, there's a thing here. So that catapulted. We started doing more research. We did it for 2 years. It did very well. So I look at this. So I started looking at gluten-free. It's rubbish. No recipes. Stuff in the supermarket is bloody awful. I'm not going to mention the company. Still awful. And I was thinking, batters, like we had a chat all those years ago. All these things were just like fucking horrible. And I'm like, what? Anyway. So I got together with the food scientist, B, and we started mucking about. And I was like, I can't make pastry. Why? Why not? So I started researching flours and got some stuff, mucked about. And I used butter and then margarine and cooking times and less sugar, more sugar. It took me a long time. Anyway, so I thought, well, this is interesting. So I found Kyle, my publisher, and I said to her, Kyle, why don't I do this gluten-free book? She went, what? What's that? And I told you, no, I'm not interested. And I went, no, don't just dismiss it. She went, no, but won't make any money, blah, blah. It's fad. I said, okay. I said, I'll tell you what, this was a Friday. Don't leave it. Think about it. Monday we'll have a chat. Not interested. We met in the Groucho. Never forget it. No. Monday. Okay. I thought, oh, she's going to go for it. So I thought, oh, bollocks, I'll just give her a ring. So I phoned her up and said, on Friday, about 4 o'clock, Monday, sorry. And she went, what? And I said, she went, no, I've told you. All right, Kyle, please, I'll tell you what, I'll take a reduced fee on it to do it. She went, really? I said, yeah. And I'll never forget it, Calum. She went this. She went, okay, we'll give it a whirl. That book, down here somewhere, got one left somewhere. That book did, here we are. There we go, hold on. Hold the line, caller. That book, this one, this is the Norwegian version. Or Swedish one, I can't remember what I use now. That book did up to counting a few years ago, 350,000 sold. That also went into, I think it was 11 languages, 17 countries. Purely that one there, that basic book. I've still got them here now. It was just basic cooking. To get a book into France, Germany, Holland, Spain, America, as an English chef, no chance. No chance. Even Gordon struggles. That, wow, blew me. We wrote 5 or 6. And do you know what, Calum? I still get royalties on that book every year. And it although we wrote 4 in the end. And then in the end, though, things started to change. Excuse me. So I employed a food scientist. It was the technologist at Nestle. She left, and we did books together. She was brilliant. Her knowledge about understanding stuff. That moved on to batters, obviously what we spoke about those years ago. And and then that all blew up and went huge, and I've become this ambassador, and it was purely by chance. I mean, I used to say to people, I'm not a doctor. I'm curious. I want to know why these things work and why they don't work. And that's how it started. Then what you get is, if you're a celiac, chances are your immune system's down, so you might be lactose intolerant. And then you get diabetics saying to me, Phil, you've done so much for that. Can you perhaps look at food for diabetes or diabetics? Oh, it's a big old thing. Anyway, I wrote 2 books on that. Hardest books I've ever written in my life. I wrote 2 diabetics books, or food for diabetics, which are very different things. Gone through the roof. But meticulous attention to detail writing those books. You can't just write anything. It's really, it was really tough. It took me 2 years, but we did it. And then so then that became, oh, you're the expert. No, I'm not. I just want to know why things change and why can't we do it? So I came out of that a little bit, left, everyone jumped on the bandwagon. That's fine. Things changed, you can get everything now.
Because it was just a fad.
Just a fad. So I was very proud of that. Very proud of both those books.
It's funny though, like gluten free, because when I refitted the shop just before COVID, I took away a section in the shop and I put in a gluten free section, but I wanted it to be gluten free all the time, so it wasn't just a Monday or whatever some shops do. I wanted gluten free there all the time, because what you've got to remember is young Susie that's celiac or gluten intolerant is coming in, but she's dictating what the whole family are eating. They're not one person's coming here, so one's going there, one's going there. It's not happening. So if really all I've got to do is fix the problems, fix fix her dietary requirements is
Yeah.
going to dictate the whole family eating. You
Yeah.
know, and they don't need a full menu because they're not expecting a full menu. They're just wanting to be able to have fish and chips, a few other items, and it be safe. And that is it, you know.
And that's the
And
key, Calum.
that's
Safe.
been
That's the word.
yeah.
Safe.
Well, what one of the things that I stipulate is when celiacs come in and they say that I'm celiac, I say, look, I've deliberately never gone out to get a celiac badge because there is gluten everywhere in the shop. Okay, so the risk is still there because it's airborne and it
Yeah.
cross contamination. Although it's a different system, it's still in the business. And I said I can't take that risk. You can if you want, but I can't take that risk and say it's celiac. You know, I'm 99.9% sure that you won't get anything. But if you are a high intolerance, I would not eat in here. You know, and that's me just being honest. So, but the Bay on the Road, I've gone total gluten free in there
Yeah.
because we do so much. Like I do the Outlander film set a lot, and you know there's so many dietary requirements on there. So for me, it's so much easier just to be totally celiac in there
Yeah.
because then it means you're ticking every single box all the time instead of having to wait on a wedding, waiting on the celiac coming first because you can't have any gluten clicking about in that little tin box. So, but it's been a big game changer for us. That's opened the door to so many people. And I think, that fad is really not a fad. Some people use it as a fad diet, but there's so many people it's not a choice.
What made me really angry is that people call it that, but it's not. It's a serious autoimmune disease, and people tend to get this thing. Oh, it's just a bit of a fad, and you get all sorts of idiots giving out really ridiculous information. So, oh, put in a fryer, it'll be all right, kills. No, it doesn't get rid of it. What they tend to forget is if you put a handful of flour, you just literally put it on there to make pastry, that'll contaminate 3.5 meters around you, and they just brush it
Hmm.
away. And thank goodness now things are changing because it's the bloody law, and you can go to prison if you seriously hurt somebody for not understanding those
Yeah.
regulations. And I think that's a really good thing. And I think it forced people into, oh, it's not. No, this is a very, very serious problem. And if you've got it, I remember a friend of mine. Well, I was in Rick Stein's years ago, and this bottle of champagne arrived, and it was from John. It was like, "Oh, thanks, Phil Vickery, Celiacs, president of London Celiac Society." Oh, so you didn't have to do that on table 6. Shook his hand. Oh no, you've helped so much. Blah blah blah. Anyway, got an email 2 years later saying, oh, "I've been poisoned. Someone didn't tell somebody else, and now I'm going to be off 6 weeks." And that's the downside. And it comes down to trust, and people just don't trust. And thank God the
Hmm.
law changed, and it's now, it's made people force them to understand what these problems are, and it's really good, really good.
Yeah, but you've still got these people, and this what really does my head. I see folk on the internet, and because Natasha's law came in, and if you're making
Yeah,
little pots of sauces, you've got to obviously label them up. And you see folk, and they'll be like, so if I don't tub it up, I don't have to label it. And you're like, oh my God, just put a fucking sticker on it. You know what I mean? It's like it's weird. All the energy to try and find a way. It's the same. It was the same as COVID. So what can I do to not have my staff wear a mask? Just put a fucking mask on. Just fucking the
fine.
energy try to find a loophole is unbelievable. And you know what's the point? Just get ahead of the program. That's like me with the MSc. I wanted to be ahead of the game. So like we were the first shop to have it in the UK and for Scottish fish. And for me it was about being ahead of the game. It's better doing things yourself than being told what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nature, isn't it? You know.
I've got to tell you a great story. I went to a restaurant,
So
quite a famous one recently. Great lunch. On their menu it says, "Don't ask for allergens. All the allergens in every bit of food we do. So don't bother asking. Don't come. Don't come. Yeah, he said, don't come.
is that what it said?
Every allergen is in
Fucking
every
hell.
bit of food, so just don't bother. If you got one of those allergens, don't bother turning up because we don't do it.
So that's them just clearing their own back. Just
I thought it's actually quite cool, isn't it?
it's
Anyway,
it's, it's, it's it's quite clever, like, isn't it? It's, it's,
yeah, it's
it's
great.
mad but clever.
Covers it.
So with all them books behind you, what 3 books would you recommend to my listeners to read? Anything that you think's quite powerful and influential?
I suppose Harold McGee, which was on cooking. He wrote the original book on understanding food. It's a little bit technical, I suppose. If you're into food, it's really cool. But as basic books, that's a real tough one. There's the Oxford Food Companion. That's a great book. I did have one, lent to someone, and then given it back. I don't know what it is. That gives you every food, an understanding of every bit, every ingredient, pretty much. Really interesting. That's one of the ones. I would then say, God, there's so many, Calum. So many I've got here. It depends what you're into. General
Mm-hmm.
books. For me, I read Keith Lloyd's books, not because they were interesting recipe books, but the man knew the history of food. Now, if you're going to be a young chef, then I encourage people to rather than buy books, read the newspapers every weekend. Buy the 4 of them on Sunday, 4 on a Saturday, and read the food sections. Every bit of food, every restaurant, every new fad, every new book is all in there. It's worth every penny. I did it for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I kept so many cut-ins of, I'll do that one day and research that. So that's that. I don't think I can give you 3 definitive ones, but from my point of view, certainly as I got older, the Harold McGee style Oxford Food Companion, I mean, this one, even things like this kitchen science book, it's just so interesting. It breaks down why things change, and it just gives you a rounded knowledge of food. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, as I've changed in my career, I've gone through different things. So I read Larousse Gastronomique, blah blah blah. But I can't really give 3, Calum, if I'm honest.
Okay. And who would be the biggest influence in your career? Who was your mentor? Did you have one?
Television wise, you still there?
No, anything. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. No,
Any mentor. So,
I think the Roux brothers were very good. I think their baking book was fantastic. I think their pastry book was, to me, the basic, really cool modern pastry was amazing. As I got older, Keith Floyd, I based my presenting, this persona, I suppose is the word, on what he did and the way he looked at stuff. That I based my whole thing on him. He was amazing. I still think he's the best television chef. He wasn't even that really. He was a gourmand who who did a bit of cooking, but he knew about the history of food, could speak 2 languages, and he really understood about food or where it came from. He certainly
mm,
was. But as I said to you at the start, I'm largely self-taught. So there's very few people who I look up to and think, oh, you're a really good chef, because they are. They have their moments. Raymond Blanc's very good. I think the chefs who I liked when I was younger, have all gone now. Nico Ladenis, I suppose, coming from the oil business at 38 and get 3 Michelin stars. Some really good guys. Marco Pierre White broke the mould, but then everyone did to a certain extent. So
mm-hmm.
I would encourage youngsters to read, cook, eat, and question. Anthony Bourdain, I've looked at some of his stuff recently. Question it. Question why. Why am I doing this stuff? And it's interesting. On my website, I went backward this morning to do how did you become a chef? All of them did it. Charles Wellington did it, and Dr. Chris did it. And mine one went back to 10 years ago now. I went to my local college, and there was 2 surviving chefs who taught me, and one called Brian Gillam. He was the Queen's pastry chef. My God, he was good. Oh my God, he's the best pastry chef I've ever seen. Old school. Blew me apart. Him and Eddie Spence. And there's a bit with the interview, and I wasn't there. And the interviewer, my director, said, "So what was it about Phil?" And he looked at the camera, he did this. He went, he wanted to know why. He was asking questions. Why? Why is that? Why is that? So I've always been a natural. I've got like an interest. I want to know why. When people say to me, blah, I'm like, okay, is it? Why are we doing that way? So I've always been inquisitive. And I think that's stayed with me. And I would encourage young chefs
That's
to
important.
ask. So
Mm-hmm.
if I were for you, Callum, so
Question.
why are you using that oil? Why is that batter? What is the temperature? Why do you get your fish from there? That's the only way you learn. And even now, I went to filmed in Malaya. We were very lucky. I flew to Bangkok, Hong Kong first, then we filmed down to Bangkok, got the Orient Express down. I actually cooked in the market that Keith Floyd cooked in Georgetown. And it was just, it's just that, I want to know why. Why does that work? And when I got to Malaya, to Singapore, I realised how much I didn't know about Malay food. I knew nothing. I've been cooking 35, 40 years. So it's like a sponge. I want to know why. And then I came back and researched it, bought books, cooked it, so read, eat, read.
Questions are the steering wheel of the mind.
You're the man.
Correct, Amondo?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to thank you, Phil, because I know that it's getting close to Guinness time. Close to Guinness time for you.
Hey, you got 1 minute. Hurry up. You know me well.
I was going to say, I was going to explain, like, to the viewers, because some of them might be a bit young, that they don't probably watch council TV anymore.
So they go online and watch it. I had black hair then.
You had hair.
Yeah. All right. Don't you start. You dye yours. I don't.
Hey, there's no dye here. It's as grey as anything.
Yeah.
Okay, Phil, I want to thank you very much for joining Forked Up podcast. It's been a pleasure. Good to catch up with you again. It's been a while. And all the best, my friend.
And do you know what? I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And